Happy Halloween! It's the White Shadow Norway coming in here to scare your suckalocks off. Well, not me, but my favorite horror movies of the last 100 years. Actually, I'm gonna go through my favorite horror movies for the last 100 years, year by year. Some years have just one movie though, that's my favorite, while others have like a top five. The only years that's not in this video, that's not being talked about, is my favorites from 1970 to 1990, because I made a video for Halloween last year talking about my favorites from those two decades. So I'll link to that in the description below, and I'll just get to it because this most likely will be a long one. I'm going to start in the year of 1920. There was a few horror movies, like short movies and stuff before that, but officially, as far as feature-length movies, 1920 is the first year of horror movies. So that's over 100 years ago, actually. So my favorites that year, I've written down two movies. The first one is the original Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, with John Barrymore as both of them, Jekyll turning into Mr. Hyde from a bad chemical experiment. John Barrymore was actually Drew Barrymore's granddad. My favorite film that year, however, is the German expressionist horror movie called The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. That's to many people, it's viewed as the first horror film, and it's really cool to watch really old movies. Man, they're really creepy and scary because it's like entering another world. It's 100 years ago, and the difference between then and nowadays is like it was a different planet, and I guess it was in a lot of ways. So my favorite for 1920, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Moving to 1921, I have only one favorite movie there, and that is The Phantom Carriage, Scandinavian horror movie. Might just be the first Scandinavian one there. And it's one that's become a classic in recent years, that most people didn't really know about until in the last few years. So, but if you're into your old school black and white silent horror films, then definitely check out The Phantom Carriage. For 1922, it's another German film directed by F.W. Murnau, and it is based on Bram Stoker's Dracula book, and it is of course Nosferatu. Now there was a lawsuit because they took the story from Bram Stoker's Dracula book, and he was pretty far from with that. So he got mad, and he sued him, and they lost, and part of the penalty was to destroy all copies of the Nosferatu film. Now think about the disaster if that had happened to that classic. I mean, it's one of the greatest horror movies of all time. Max Schreck playing Dracula, or Nosferatu as it's called in that movie, and he's just so super creepy. There's a documentary type movie about him as well, and he was Dracula. I mean, watch that documentary too. He was like he took the part that serious. That you could say he was Dracula, like Sean Connery or Roger Moore was James Bond in a way, but he took it even further. Anyway, great horror movie, as scary now as ever, from 1922. My favorite then, Nosferatu. I have no movies for 23 and 24, so that probably means that there wasn't any good horror movies those years. Granted, I haven't seen everything, so if there's some movies missing from these best of list, it just means that I haven't seen them. So if you ask like, why the hell isn't that movie on there, it means that I haven't seen it. you know, I haven't seen everything. I've seen a lot of horror movies, but not everything. Anyway, 1925 is the year, and it's The Phantom of the Opera, the original with the genius actor Lon Chaney. I mean, who could ever forget that face after he put the makeup on for The Phantom of the Opera? Another silent film too, and a real tragedy as well as a horror movie, but a great film there. My favorite, 1925, The Phantom of the Opera. Back to F.W. Murnau from Germany for my favorite 1926 called Faust. It's a bet between the demon Mephisto and I believe God or an angel. It's been such a long time, but I believe God. If Mephisto can corrupt an honest man and turn him into committing sin, as much sin as possible, you know, in Faust, another early, more now German expressionistic horror film from 1926 there. In 1927 it was actually a lost film, but they managed to paste it together from stills and whatever little footage they've found, and that's a shame, but they've managed to turn it into a good movie anyway. Also starring Lon Chaney there as a man who believes he's a vampire in London after midnight, my favorite from 1927. No movies listed for 28, 29 and 30, so we skip to 1931. And for that year, the Universal monsters started to emerge on the scene, you know, the classic Universal monsters. So in third place, I have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and that's the Universal version of that one. And then I have Dracula with Bela Lugosi as number 2, and of course the iconic Frankenstein monster in Frankenstein, the original, is my favorite from 1931. Moving on to 1932, I have a top 3 there as well. Number 3 is The Old Dark House, a bit of ghost house, spooky fun there. Number 2 is the Universal monsters, The Mummy, the original, called just The Mummy. And my favorite is Todd Browning's Freaks. That actually used real freaks as the actors from picked up from sideshows and stuff like that back in the days, and it pretty much ruined Todd Browning's career that he was willing to go that far. So but anyway, you know, great classic movie there from 1932. My favorite horror movie then is Freaks. Moving to 1933, I have 2 of them there. It's also from Universal Monsters. It's The Invisible Man is my number 2. Yeah, one of the greatest Universal monster movies there, definitely. But my favorite is the original King Kong, which is actually an amazing film for 1933 with the effects and how they managed to do that such a long time ago. It's crazy to this day. I mean, my favorite has to be the Peter Jackson version, but King Kong is the great original from 33. I have no movies from 34, but in 1935 I have one favorite, and that is the Universal Monsters Bride of Frankenstein. 36, 37, 38 has no movies either, so I move to 1939 and I have 2 movies there. The first is The Son of Frankenstein is my number 2, and The Hound of the Baskervilles, the Arthur Conan Doyle book made into many movies and TV series over the years, of course, and I love that story about the Hound of the Baskervilles. What a beast that dog was, but you feel kind of sorry for him, to say the least, in the end too. Anyway, my favorite for 1939, The Hound of the Baskervilles. Moving into the 40s now, 1940 I have no movies though, but in 1941 it's also Universal Monsters. They pretty much killed it back then, 30s, 40s, and that is probably my favorite monster. It's between this monster and Frankenstein for me, but it is the Wolfman. That's my favorite for 1941. 1942 is also 2 Universal movies there. At number 2, The Mummy's Tomb, and at number 1, The Ghost of Frankenstein. Universal kills it for 43 as well. As my favorite there is Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. They started combining the various monsters now and putting them several or all of them into the same movie. So my fave for 1943, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. This is in the middle of World War II, my friends, but they made some great horror movies anyway. Then 1944, I have a top four actually, and three of the four, all but my number one, is from the Universal Monsters. So my number four is The Mummy's Curse. My number three is The Mummy's Ghost, and my number two is House of Frankenstein. But my favorite is a creepy ghost flick called The Uninvited for 1944. That's my number one. 1945, I only have one movie, and it's an anthology movie, and a great scary one at that, called Dead of Night. 1946, my favorite is the classic The Spiral Staircase. And then I'm skipping to 1954, so I guess no great horror movies between 46 and 54 for whatever reason. I'm sure some movies came out then, but since I haven't listed anything, means I haven't seen any great ones from those years. So, but in 1954, I have two movies. Number two is the classic Japanese monster flick Godzilla, and number one, it's Universal Monsters again, with the creature from the Black Lagoon. The first horror movie I ever saw was a Super 8mm short version of the third installment in the Creature from the Black Lagoon series, called The Creature Walks Among Us. That scared the living daylights out of me, and I couldn't see anyone with bandages on their head for a long time, because the monster had that in some scenes in the movie, and he tore it off and turned into this. You could see the real monster, real burnt bad behind the bandages, so that scared the hell out of me, but it also made me a fan of horror movies for life there. My favorite from 1954 though, the original Creature from the Black Lagoon from Universal Monsters once again. Moving to 1958, I have two movies there. My number two is a Norwegian movie called De Dødes Tjern. Roughly translated, that is Lake of the Dead, and it is a ghost type movie. This group of friends, they go out to this cabin in the woods, and there's a lake there that's supposed to be haunted. The whole area is supposed to be haunted, and it's really, really creepy. It's available on YouTube, I think, with English subs, so if you're a horror movie fan, you can take your old black and white horror movies, then you should definitely go seek it out and watch that. The Lake of the Dead, or De Dødes Tjern, my number two for 1958. And the I guess, yeah, the best Norwegian horror movie of all time, and also the first, actually, yes, from 1958. My favorite horror movie from 1958 though enters Christopher Lee as Dracula in the first Dracula flick he did, called Horror of Dracula. 1959, we're almost in the 60s already. Time flies fast when you're having fun and all that. I have a top three there as well. First is The Hound of the Baskervilles, starring Peter Cushing. That's another version of it, a great version. And the Hammer House of Horrors from the UK. The Hammer Studios started coming in now. So number two, I have the Hammer version of The Mummy, also starring Peter Cushing. And my favorite that year is House on Haunted Hill. Yeah, you know, just what the title says. Ghost movie classic there, my favorite from 1959. Moving into 1960, and I actually have a top five there. And I still have some movies that are supposed to be great that I haven't seen. But at number five, it's the 1960 version of The Fall of the House of Usher. And yeah, creepy ghost fun as well there. Number four is the legendary Italian director Mario Bava's Black Sunday. It's about Inquisition and witches and stuff like that, and yeah, just a great classic there, with Barbara Steele in the main part as the witch. which it would say in the Suspiria soundtrack. Anyway, that's my number 4, Black Sunday, Mario Baba. Number 3, Eyes Without a Face. Go see that one, classic too, really creepy though. Number 2 is The Brides of Dracula. This, I believe, also was a Hammer movie, but it doesn't have Christopher Lee in it. But it's a great vampire movie. Brides of Dracula is my number 2 for 1960. And not surprisingly, the iconic Alfred Hitchcock flick that changed the horror game is my number 1 for 1960. And it is, of course, let me hear it, Psycho, of course. Moving to 1961 there, I got a top 3, but a few to check. I've written in brackies down there, so there's probably some missing out of the great ones. But anyway, my top 3, number 3 is Vincent Price, starring in The Pit and the Pendulum. My number 2 is the Hammer movies, The Curse of the Werewolf. And my number 1 is the ghost flick, The Innocence. Also really creepy one there. My number 1 for 61, The Innocence. 1962, I have 2 movies. Another super creepy movie called Carnival of Souls in second place. And the classic Whatever Happened to Baby Jane is my favorite horror movie of 62. 1963, and we got a top 5 there, and I've written much to watch, so there's probably a lot of classics I need to watch there too. But anyway, of the ones I have seen, my number 5, Mario Bava from Italy, returns on direction, and it is starring Christopher Lee, and it's called The Whip and the Body is my number 5. Then enter Herschel Gordon Lewis, the grandfather of gore movies from the USA, and Blood Feast, his most infamous one. I can only imagine what it was like for people to see that much gore back then. I mean, that was way ahead of his time, and it must have shocked the hell out of people. And Blood Feast, directed by Herschel Gordon Lewis, is my number 4 for 1963. Re-enter the maestro of all maestros, my favorite my favorite director of all genres really, Alfred Hitchcock. Alfred Hitchcock's return in 1963 for The Birds is my number 3. It really has like a doomsday vibe to it. Yeah, you gotta see it if you haven't seen it, or if you have, just watch it again, rewatch. My number 2, another Mario Bava flick, and a creepy anthology there called Black Sabbath. The last segment, A Drop of Water, is super duper scary. If ghosts and hauntings scare you, then you'll piss your pants and you won't be able to sleep for a week at least, or perhaps a year. Anyway, my number 1 for 1963, perhaps the biggest haunted house ghost movie classic, called The Haunting, the original one from 1963. 1964, there's another Norwegian one in second place. I have 2 movies there, and that is called Klokker I Måneskinn, or roughly translated, I guess, Clocks in the Moonshine. And it was written by Andre Bjerke, who also wrote Lake of the Dead, or De Dødes Tjern. And that was like an anthology he wrote that was filmed, and that is that movie. And it's almost as good as Lake of the Dead actually, but it's damn near impossible to find. I recorded it on a VHS tape many years ago from Norwegian TV, and I've kept it and digitized it, and it's and I'm real happy I did, because it's almost impossible to get. I believe there was a really limited VHS release in Norway of it too. But anyway, a good Norwegian one there, Klokker I Måneskinn, a movie so scarce it doesn't even have anything but a Norwegian title, except the one I roughly translated with now, with Clocks in the Moonshine. My favorite horror movie for 1964 is Mario Bava's Blood and Black Lace. Yeah, really giallo-ish slasher type of film there, Blood and Black Lace. Murder mystery as well, with Mario Bava on direction, and of course a great classic, my number 1 for 1964. 1965, I have two movies. I've written down here that I really need to see Mario Bava's Planet of the Vampires. I've had it for over a decade and I still haven't gotten around to seeing it. I don't know why, but maybe I'll see it tonight or this Halloween. But anyway, number two of my favorite horror movies of all time, there is Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, starring Peter Cushing. He meets a group of people on a train, and he has tarot cards, and he kind of just shows them their destinies as they pick the tarot cards, and their destinies are not good ones. A a cool, quite original horror classic there from Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. My favorite movie in 1965 is the Roman Polanski directed Repulsion, and that is probably the movie that creeps me out the most out of all movies, man. It's just so damn scary if you just let it pull you, just pay full attention and let the movie pull you into it, then it's so damn scary. Repulsion, if you haven't seen that one, and if you dare, watch it. My favorite in 1965. 1966, I got a top three, another Mario Bava flick, and also a super creepy one called Kill Baby Kill at number three. Christopher Lee returns for the Hammer Dracula the Prince of Darkness at my number two, and my favorite horror movie for 1966 is Plague of the Zombies. That isn't really much of a zombie movie, but it's just classic horror, let's put it that way. 1967, I have no movies. That can only mean that there wasn't any great horror movies. But 1968, however, was a really great year for horror movies, and there's several of my top five that are regarded as classics now, some of the biggest actually. But in fifth place, it's the decent, I wouldn't say great, but it's a good movie starring Peter Cushing, and way more violent and gory than Peter Cushing usually did, and it's called Corruption. That's my number five for 68. Another Christopher Lee Dracula flick for my number four, and it's Dracula Has Risen from the Grave. Got the classic opening scenes there where Dracula is under the ice, and of course the ice breaks, and here we go again. Dracula is back alive to wreak havoc on the villagers, as he always does. Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, my number four for 1968. Top three are all big classics, and it's the Hammer movie The Devil Rides Out at number three, with an occult satanic theme to it, of course. If you're into those kind of movies, definitely watch The Devil Rides Out if you haven't. My number two, really huge classic. It set off the zombie genre actually, and it's George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. What could be greater than that? I mean, the top Night of the Living Dead, who knows? But my favorite for 1968 is Roman Polanski's classic occult satanic themed Rosemary's Baby. One of the greatest horror movies of all time there too. And from there we skip, because I have another video that lists the best horror movies of 1970 to 1990. I have no titles here for 69, so probably there wasn't many great horror movies in 1969. But anyway, if you wanna hear about the best horror movies from 1970 to 1990, then the link is in the description, my friends. So we skip to 1990. Top five there. My number five is Child's Play 2. Good follow-up to the original Child's Play. That's my number five. Number four, it's the Dario Argento, George A. Romero anthology, Two Evil Eyes, that I was lucky enough to watch at a 42nd Street theater in New York, of the old school kind, the kind where the roaches creep up on you, and yeah, man, that set the mood right for watching Two Evil Eyes in the theater for me. My number four, anyway, for 1990. My number 3 for 1990 is the best follow-up to The Exorcist, the best Exorcist movie besides the first one, and it's The Exorcist 3. My number 2, it's all about spiders, creepy crawly and arachnophobia. That's my number 2 right there for 1990. My favorite for 1990 is the ultra-violent, super gory Lucio Fulci flick, A Cat in the Brain, also known as Nightmare Concert. And yes, that's where I grabbed the title for the Nightmare Concert album from. Moving on to 1991, top 5 there as well. Number 5 is Popcorn. Number 4 is Child's Play 3. Number 3, I got Necromantic 2. Jörg Buttgereit, really a sicko German gore film about necrophilia. And number 2 is the remake of Pit and the Pendulum. Pretty good one from Stuart Gordon of Reanimator and From Beyond fame there. My favorite horror movie, however, in 1991 is Wes Craven's People Under the Stairs. 1992, and we move into Twin Peaks territory after the TV series was done, well, of course, except the third season that came many years later, not many years ago. But anyway, this is the story about what really happened to Laura Palmer and Ronette Pulaski, I believe her name was, up close when they got killed. And there's a lot of Bob in this, so it's going to be super creepy, you know what I mean? So great, scary, weird stuff there in Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me at number 5 for 1992 of my favorite horror movies of the last 100 years. My number 4 is the third installment of the Evil Dead series, Evil Dead 3 Army of Darkness. It's the most comedy out of the three, but it's still great and cool, and of course a lot of fun and horror related fun too. Number 3, at the time it was the most gory flick of all time. God knows how many gallons of stage blood they used, and it's probably up there among the most bloody horror movies of all time now too, but it's also a really dark comedy. And it's Peter Jackson's Brain Dead is my number 3 for 1992. Of course, Peter Jackson moved on to direct the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and King Kong movies. So probably he won't make a movie like Brain Dead now, but you never know. One can always hope. Number 2 for 1992 from me is Candyman, 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 Candyman. Do you dare to say it into the mirror a 5th time? Well, don't, because the Candyman might just pop up behind ya! My number 2 for 1992 anyway is the Candyman. It's been remade. I haven't seen the remake yet, but I've heard pretty good things about it, that it's supposed to be a different movie altogether. So yeah, I'll probably give that one a watch soon. My favorite for 1992 is the epic Francis Ford Coppola version of Dracula. Just a masterpiece horror movie. That one, that great version of Dracula by Coppola. My favorite for 1992, y'all. The White Shadow Nova in a place of space to be for Halloween. I hope you're having a lot of fun and watch a lot of horror movies out there. That's what October month is for, you know, and especially Halloween time, like now. So my top 5 horror movies for 1993 at number 5 is George A. Romero's Dark Half, which is based on a story by Stephen King. It's a solid one, no more no less. My number 4 is the Drew Barrymore starring Doppelganger. Kind of weird, kind of ghost monster-like movie, but yeah, I like it. Not great by any stretch either, but it's a solid horror movie there, starring Drew Barrymore and Doppelganger. Dario Argento returned in fine form for my number 3 in 1993. Called Trauma, of course, not nearly as great as his 70s and 80s movies, but definitely worth us seeing once or twice. That Trauma, directed by Italy's maestro horror director Dario Argento. Re-enter Jörg Buttgereit from Germany is known to have real violent sick movies, and this is no exception there. My number 2 for 1993 is Buttgereit's Schramm. And my favorite for 93 is Ticks. Yep, the bugs out in the woods that will turn you into, well, that's why they call ticks, because you get ticks from them. So my favorite of 93 is Ticks. Moving on to 1994 there, top 5 there also. My number 5 is Night of the Demons 2. Number 4 is John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, a pretty weird film. It's okay though, I mean, nothing like Carpenter's heyday in the late 70s, early 80s there either, but yeah, it's decent. In the Mouth of Madness at number 4. Number 3 is the third movie in the Phantasm series, Phantasm 3. All of them are good. The first 2 are definitely the best, but Phantasm 3 is solid as well. Number 2 is Night Watch, is the American title for this, but it's a Danish movie really called Nattevakten, about a night watch in a morgue. And yeah, you can probably imagine what could potentially happen when you're alone at night in the dark, and you have to go your rounds, and you have to go inside the morgue. You know what I mean? If you haven't seen that one, it's a great creepy one. Watch it. Danish, Nattevakten or Night Watch. My favorite horror movie, another epic vampire movie there from 1994, starring Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise among others, in Interview with the Vampire, based on the Anne Rice vampire stories. Great one, just absolutely great. Moving on to 1995, I got a top 5 there too. The number 5 is Candyman 2, Farewell to the Flesh. Number 4 is Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. Number 3 is Clive Barker of Hellraiser fame's Lord of Illusions. My number 2 is a movie about making snuff movies, more like a thriller horror, but a good one, called Mute Witness. And my favorite horror movie of 1995 is the little known ghost movie called Haunted, that was actually directed by Louis Gilbert, who directed several James Bond flicks like Moonraker and The Spy Who Loved Me, and I think he did You Only Live Twice, or at least he did the screenplay for that one. But anyway, seek that one out if you like horror movies, ghost type movies in the style of The Others or The Innocents or the original Haunting. Then Haunted from 1995 is a safe bet. It's a good ghost flick for Halloween, definitely. My top 5 for 1986, in 5th place, Dario Argento returns with a decent movie called Stendhal Syndrome, starring his daughter Asia Argento. Moving on to some batshit crazy Japanese flick at number 4 with Ebola Syndrome, lots of gore and everything. Number 3 moves into more comedy horror territory though, and directed by Peter Jackson as well there, of Lord of the Rings fame, and it's The Frighteners. Good fun, good comedy horror fun there at number 3. Number 2 is Thesis, and my favorite horror movie for 1996, and it's probably in my top 5 horror movies of all time now. It just keeps getting better. I've loved it since it was released, and of course everything that surrounds it with the iconic ghost face masks and costumes and everything there, really meant to be a parody on horror movies that came before it, but worked so well, and on a murder mystery level as well. It's Wes Craven's Scream. That's my favorite for 1996. 1997 we got another Norwegian movie called Mørkets Øy at number 5. Roughly translated that would be Island of Darkness or Isle of Darkness, and it's about this woman, I think it was a teacher, and she moves out to this island way out there, and there's a lot of religious fanaticism undertones, and just a lot of weird people out there. So nice creepy fun as well there, Island of Darkness or Mørkets Øy. My number 4 is the Stephen King written The Night Flyer, more of a TV movie, but yeah, it's a cool one and a long one, for a stormy rainy night. It's a good movie to have there. I think it lasts for like 3 hours or something. And then we have Intruder, That's also an Asian flick, quite original, about this crazy girl who just knocks on somebody's door one night, I believe. And yeah, I won't spoil it any further for you there, but seek that one out. Asian flick, I think Japanese or Korean, and it's called Intruder in English, from 1997. My number 2 for 97 is the follow-up to my number 1 for 96. It's Scream 2. I like all the Scream movies. The first one was better, but this one was good as well. But my favorite for 1997 is the slasher I Know What You Did Last Summer, that I also had the pleasure of watching in a theater when it was brand new. My top 5 for 1998 is number 5, got The Bride of Chucky. I thought that was a funny one, man, but with the lady Chucky, The Bride of Chucky. My number 4, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. That's the follow-up to my number 1 for 97. And then you got Halloween H2O at number 3. Not one of the best Halloween sequels, but a decent one. My number 2 is the vampire action flick Blade, and my number 1 is the original of The Ring, the Japanese Ringu. Creepy one there from 1998. My top 5 for 1999, moving into the 2K soon now. At number 5, it's House on Haunted Hill, the remake. I thought that was a good remake. Number 4 is the Blair Witch Project. If you're scared of out in the woods, then it doesn't get any creepier than the Blair Witch Project. And a lot of people thought it was real. It was like the first movie to hype itself as a real movie, something that really happened on the internet back then, the earlier days of the internet in 1999. My number 3 is the classic starring Johnny Depp, Sleepy Hollow, about the Headless Horseman, and Tim Burton directed that one. Yeah. And my number 2 is another one starring Johnny Depp, and it's The Occult, The Ninth Gate. I just love that one. It's the kind of movie I can watch again and again and again. And the same goes for my number 1 movie of 1999. Some will probably argue it's not a horror movie, but it's got enough creepy elements for me to label it as a horror movie, and it's the late great Stanley Kubrick's farewell film, his last film, starring Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, and it's Eyes Wide Shut is my favorite for 1999. Moving into the 2Ks there for the year 2000. My number 5 is Scream 3. My number 4 is called The Gift. That's another ghost type flick. As far as I remember, it's been years since I've seen it, but I thought it was really good. Number 3 is the Japanese zombie flick that's called Junk. Really gory as well and a lot of fun. Number 2 is Battle Royale. It's about difficult teens that are given up on in society or have done really wild shit, so they send them off to this place that they have to kill each other, and there'll only be like one remaining survivor. They have to kill their best friends in order to stay alive. So original and gruesome story there. My number 2 for 2000, Battle Royale. My number 1 for 2000 is, however, Final Destination, the first one that kicked off that franchise, and I like all the movies in that franchise. It's about death coming for you, and if you try to escape death, then it's going to be coming for you again and again and again and again and again. It's the White Shadow Norway, and my favorite horror movies of the last 100 years from 1920 to 2020. And this is for 2001, and my number 5 is the slasher Valentine, really good slasher. Number 4 is the Asian Pulse, which is really, really scary. Number 3 is the return for Dario Argento, probably his last really great feature film, as he returned to Giallo territory for Nonno Sonno is the title in Italian, but it's called Sleepless in English there from Dario. My number 3 for 2001, which was a great year for horror actually. My number 2 is the Brian Houston and Stuart Gordon H.P. Lovecraft, based on H.P. Lovecraft movie Dagon. Oh yeah, that delivers the goods. That's all I got to say about that. But my very favorite, however, for 2001 is the ghost movie starring Nicole Kidman called The Others. It's the return to movies like The Innocents, and it's just brilliant. 2002, I got a top 5 there too. I actually haven't seen 28 Days Later. I've written that one as one I need to see. I don't know why. I've never seen such a big recent classic, but it is what it is. You can't find time to watch them all, you know. So my number 5 here is a Spanish ghost movie called Darkness. Seek it out. I forgot who directed it right now, but it should be easy to find on IMDb and stuff like that. Number 4 is Cabin Fever. My number 3 is Blade 2. My number 2 is the original Asian, or I think Japanese ghost movie, The Eye. Some really brutal jump scares in that one. My number 1, however, is the independent werewolf flick called Dog Soldiers, one of the best werewolf flicks in recent times. Moving to 2003, one I need to see here that's regarded a modern day classic is Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses. Excuse me, I actually haven't seen that one. My top 5 is the Japanese Tale of Two Sisters ghost flick, jump scares and all kinds of creepy shit going on. Number 5 there for 2K3. My number 4 is Final Destination 2. And my number 3 is a Norwegian movie called Villmark, which is a slasher that happens out in the woods. Hence the English title Dark Woods. Number 2, back to Asian horror with One Missed Call, and my number 1 that year is High Tension from France. Kind of moved it back to the old school gore flicks there, Italian style, for 2K3. My top 5 for 2004, at number 5 is a gay slasher movie called Hellbent. Yep, but it's a good slasher. And number 4 is Dario Argento's The Card Player. It's not a great one, but it's good. It's solid. It's good to just relax to on a dark night there from Dario. Number 3, I got the Dawn of the Dead remake, which actually is so different from the original Romero movie from '78 that it's a movie of its own. And that's the best way to go about it with remakes, really. I mean, straight remakes, what's even the point? We all know that the originals are gonna be better regardless, but the Dawn of the Dead remake, yeah, is probably the best so-called remake there is. If you don't count like The Thing from 1982, of course, and stuff like that, but in recent times anyway. My number 2 for 2K4 is Saw, Enter Jigsaw, you know, torture pornish type stuff there, always good fun. And my number 1 is the extremely creepy Japanese ghost movie called Shudder. Not the remake, but the original Shudder. 2005, I also got a top 5. My number 5 is White Noise. My number 4 is Land of the Dead. That's also a Romero zombie movie, and it's good. It's not among the best, but it's a solid one. Number 3 is The Exorcism of Emily Rose. My number 2 is Saw 2. And my number 1 is the Keanu Reeves starring Constantine. For 2006, I got Saw 3 at number 5. I got Final Destination 3 at number 4. And I got Silent Hill, based on a computer PlayStation game, of course. Ghost Town, Doom Dread type flick at number 3, Silent Hill. Number 2 is from the best Norwegian horror trilogy of all time. There's not much competition, but this one is really good, and it's on a slasher tip, and it's called Cold Prey. Definitely seek that one out and watch if you can. My favorite for 2K6 was 13 Game of Death. 2007, I got a top 5 too. My number 5 was Wreck. My number 4 was Trick or Treat. It's become like a recent classic movie to watch for Halloween, so definitely if you want to get in the Halloween spirit, watch Trick or Treat. I don't think it's like super duper great like some people do, but I think it's solid. Number 3 for 2K7 for me was Paranormal Activity. Number 2 was The French Frontiers. Really action-packed horror flick, that one. And my number one was the based on a Stephen King story, The Mist, for 2K7. 2008, I got a top 5 as well. The monster movie Cloverfield at number 5. Cold Prey 2, that's Norwegian. That's the best one out of that trilogy, in my opinion. It's my number 4. And you got The French Martyrs at number 3. The Strangers, a recent times creepy one, home invasion flick there. At my number 2, when asked why they did it, because you were home. Man, how crazy is that? Anyway, I'm not going to spoil it further for you if you haven't seen it, but yeah, watch The Strangers again. There's also a follow-up. I haven't seen that one, but I heard it's no better, no cake. My favorite for 2008, however, is the Swedish vampire movie Let the Right One In. Maybe the last horror masterpiece movie, really. I mean, that came out of nowhere and knocked everyone's teeth out, you know. Straight out of Sweden there, Let the Right One In. The best horror movie of 2008, in my opinion. 2009, at number 5, I got Final Destination 4. I got The Haunting in Connecticut at number 4. It's based on a true story, supposedly. I got The Loved Ones, that's a cool slasher, at number 3. And I got the Friday the 13th remake at number 2. That was a solid remake, in my opinion. And at number 1, I have Orphan, about this little girl that's adopted. That seems well-mannered and super nice, but boy, is she anything but that they're about to find out after a short while. My favorite horror movie for 2009 there, Orphan. Into the 2010s, there we go, and I got a top 5 for 2010 as well. We got the shark movie The Reef at number 5, Paranormal Activity 2 at number 4. I got Insidious, James Wan is coming at number 3, and I got the Super Sicko movie, perhaps the sickest horror movie of all time, called The Serbian Film at number 2. There's supposed to be a new version that's either dropped or gonna drop that as even more uncut than that version. I can't imagine it being any worse than it already was, but we shall see. Anyway, my number 2 is a Serbian film for 2010. And my number 1 is the 2010 remake of The Wolfman. Underrated as all hell, and a great version of The Wolfman, updated and great. My top 5 for 2011, number 5, You're Next. Number 4 is Final Destination 5. I got The Innkeepers at number 3. And I got Paranormal Activity 3 at number 2. And I got Scream 4 at number 1. I think that's the best Scream movie after the original Scream from 1996. Great fun, that one, Scream 4. Nothing really beats that for 2011. 2012, I got Sinister at number 5. I didn't think it was as great as many people does. I got the Pact at number 4, then I got VHS at number 3, the anthology, the ABCs of Death with tons of short movies at number 2, and the remake of the 1989 TV movie from the UK, A Ghost Story for Christmas, super creepy, original, creepier that one, but they did a great job on the remake and the feature film version of The Woman in Black. That's my number 1 for 2012. 2013, I got VHS 2 at number 5. I got Under the Skin at number 4. Then I got Insidious Chapter 2 at number 3. I got Oculus at number 2, and James Wan is really coming now at number 1 with The Conjuring. I believe James Wan is the modern day John Carpenter or Dario Argento. Is definitely the best horror director nowadays, as he just keeps on proving. So, you know, The Conjuring, my number 1 for 2013. 2014, I got It Follows at number 5. That got a lot of hype when it dropped, but I thought it was just okay, really. It's good, but it's not great, I think. Just my opinion. And my number 4 is ABC's The Death 2, another anthology extravaganza there. Number 3 is As above, so below. That's under the catacombs in France, and a lot of scary shit going on there. My number 2 for 2014 is the Baba Duke. Another pretty crazy one. And my number 1 for 2014 is a dark, sinister vampire flick that's really well acted and directed, and it's just really good, I think. And that's A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. We are almost in the present, my friends. Almost. We've gone through 100 years of horror movies, but we got a few years to go though. My top 3 for 2015, I got Insidious Chapter 3 at number 3. I got Tales of Halloween, which is another Halloween-themed anthology. That's solid at number 2. And at number 1, I got The Witch. 2016 we go, and number 5 is Don't Breathe. The Shallows is number 4. That's another shark type flick. Zombie flick at number 3. I got Train to Busan, that is. And number 2, I got Ouija 2, The Origin of Evil. Actually much better than the first Ouija. And my number 1 for 2016, James Wan returns and kills it again with The Conjuring 2. 2017, I got Jigsaw at number 5. That's the last installment in the Saw franchise. I got 47 Meters Down at number 4. That's also a shark movie. The remake of Stephen King's It at number 3. I love the first one in the remake series. The second one was just boring as all hell to me, but yeah, the first one, It, I really liked. Number 2 is Annabelle Creation. Not a James Wan type flick there, but of course the doll Annabelle in fine form and good shape to kill your ass. My favorite, however, for 2017 is the slasher Happy Death Day. You gotta love that mask, man, and it's just a lot of fun. Brings back memories of Scream, really, and you know, the more fun type slashers. They're my number 1 for 2017. Happy Death Day. My top 5 for 2018. Number 5, I got A Quiet Place. Number 4, I got Lords of Chaos. That's arguably not a horror movie, but more of a documentary type film about Norwegian black metal. It's got a lot of wrong info, so you can't really see it as a true documentary as such. It would be bullshit, but as just an entertaining flick to watch about how they managed to tell the story about Norwegian black metal totally wrong, then I guess, you know, Lords of Chaos it's a cool watch. So my number 3 is called Perfection. My number 2 is the Suspiria remake. I really like that one. It's not like the original at all, and of course Argento had nothing to do with directing it, but I still really like the Suspiria remake. And the number 1 for the White Shadow Norway horror movie for 2018 is Halloween 2018. That's the first one in the trilogy that Halloween Kills that just came out is in, and Halloween Ends is the next one. Whether it ends or not, I doubt it will end. But anyway, when that one drops, it's been 13 Halloween movies, my friends, and I really like the Halloween 2018 one. Hence its number 1 spot on my chart for that year. Yeah. Only 2 years to go. I got a top 5 also for 2019. Annabelle Comes Home is my number 5. The Child's Play remake is my number 4. I actually really liked that one. I thought it was fun. I mean, the Chucky doll and everything looks way different, so it takes some getting used to, but as a film, I thought it was fun. My number 3 is the follow-up to The Shining, also based on a Stephen King story in Doctor Sleep. I didn't think it was great. I thought it was good. Not bad, but good. No more or less. My number 2 is the follow-up to Happy Death Day, called Happy Death Day 2 You. That's my number 2 for 2019. And my number 1 for that year is the super creepy Us. Don't mess with us. And now, my friends, the final year, and I got a top 3 there, you know, because of Corona, not as many movies dropped and everything, so the world been put on hold, but anyway, they managed to drop some good horror movies. I got The Dark and the Wicked, a really, really sinister movie at number 3 there. It's not the kind of movie you watch for fun, I'll tell you that. My number 2 is The Invisible Man. It's absolutely not a remake of the Universal Monsters Invisible Man. It's on some total other shit, and it's really original. And that goes for my number 1 for 2022, which is The Possessor, directed by David Cronenberg's son. I hope you enjoyed my walkthrough of my favorite horror movies for the last 100 years, minus 2 decades that are in their own video, with the link in the description to this one. I'm the White Shadow Norway, and I'm about to just go chill and watch some horror movies, and I hope you do the same for Halloween. And I want to wish all y'all a very haunting, happy Halloween. Peace.